Have you ever realized that in the very house you grew up in, there's an unwritten rule no one bothers to say out loud, but every kid absorbs into their blood? For me, that rule boiled down to one sentence: Madison deserves it, Rachel fends for herself. And unfortunately, I'm Rachel. My full name is Rachel Donovan, born and raised in Austin, Texas, a city of blazing sun, country music, and cookie-cutter suburbs with identical white picket fences. I'm in my 30s now, working as an accountant, a job many call dry. But the story I'm about to tell you, trust me, is anything but dry. It's a family tragedy that stretches from my childhood to the day I had to stand up to my entire family to defend the one house left to me by the only person who truly loved me. As a kid, I thought my younger sister Madison and I were like any other siblings, fighting over toys, bickering over car seats, then making up over a shared candy bar. But within a few years, I realized that in our parents' eyes, we weren't starting from the same line. My sister, 3 years younger than me, was nothing short of a little queen in the Donovan household. Meanwhile, as the independent older child, I was always assumed to need less, deserve less, and certainly not worthy of praise. I vividly remember being 12. I had just been selected for the middle school debate team, a chance I earned after spending an entire summer reading books, writing speeches, and practicing in front of a mirror. All I needed was a $200 fee to officially join. I mustered all my courage to talk to my parents one evening. My dad, Robert, listened, frowned, took a sip of his beer and said, "Kid, we're tightening the budget lately. Debate? What's the point? You planning to argue for a living?" I bit my lip, my heart pounding, but before I could respond, my mom, Linda, chimed in. "Rachel, you know Madison needs a new piano for her music lessons. It's a bit pricey, around $3,000, but it's an investment in her future. 3,000 for a piano, but not a dime for my dream. Do you see the unfairness?" In my family, though, that was just another Tuesday. I didn't cry then. I nodded, pretending I understood, and went back to my room. But I remember staring at my trembling hands on the debate team application, then crumpling it up. I knew I'd lost, and more importantly, I understood that in my parents' eyes, Madison was always the investment, while I was just an unnecessary expense. Some say a favored child isn't to blame. True, Madison didn't ask for the piano, the dance classes, or the European summer camps. But imagine this, growing up as the older sister, existing only as a shadow, doing homework alone, craving a single word of praise, but getting only comparisons. One day, you realize the unfairness isn't just about material things. It takes root deep in your heart. Another time, I brought home a report card full of A's. I eagerly showed it to Dad. He glanced at it and said, "Good job, kid. But have you seen Madison's painting? Her teacher says it'll be displayed in the school's art gallery." That was it. My achievement, nights of staying up late, trembling before exams, was brushed aside for Madison's scribbled artwork. I didn't hate her. I just felt like the pillar holding up the porch. Essential, sure, but who praises a pillar? People applaud the flowers hanging on the porch, and Madison was those flowers. If it weren't for my grandmother Evelyn, I might have believed I was truly invisible. She was the only one who called me my bright girl, the only one who noticed my small awards, the only one who asked if I was okay after those biased family dinners. I still remember the lavender scent in her room, her gentle hugs, and her whisper. "They don't love Madison more than you, Rachel. They just love the image Madison gives them. You reflect the truth. Hardworking, practical, simple, and the truth always scares people." I clung to her words like a lifeline in a stormy sea. But let's be honest, as I grew older, that line of unfairness carved itself deeper. Madison went to a fancy private school, chauffeured by Dad every morning. Me? I took the 6:30 a.m. bus, lugging my heavy backpack. Madison had tutors, art classes, and summer trips to Europe. Me? I worked at the library, babysat neighbors' kids, and saved every penny for textbooks. You might think I was jealous. Yes, I was. But more than jealousy, I felt betrayed by the very people who were supposed to be the fairest in the world, my parents. I often wondered, Is a child's worth measured by how much they make their parents look good in front of the neighbors? If so, I lost from the starting line. When I share this, you might think I'm bitter. But trust me, I just want you to understand what it feels like to grow up in the dark, even when you're part of the same light. And from those tiny cracks in my childhood, the conflict grew, took root, and eventually exploded into a family war I had to face later. That war centered on the house Evelyn left me, the only place where I felt I belonged. But to protect it, I had to stand against my parents and Madison, who always believed everything belonged to the golden child. Here's my question for you. Reading this story, have you ever been forced to share something that was rightfully yours just because someone else thought they deserved it more? Have you ever been called selfish the first time you dared to say no? If you have, you probably know the choking feeling in your chest, wanting to scream but keeping a calm face. And if you haven't, stick with me on this journey. Because sometimes one person's story mirrors the hidden corners of your own life you haven't yet seen. If I had to name one person who made me believe I was worth something, it wouldn't be my mom or dad. It would be Evelyn, my mom's mother. In a house where every compliment seemed magnetically drawn to Madison, Grandma was the only one who redirected that magnet, just a little, toward me. I still remember a summer afternoon when I was 13. Madison was practicing ballet in the living room, Mom clapping along to the music, Dad smiling and recording with his old camcorder. Me? I was alone at the kitchen table, scribbling away at advanced math homework. No one noticed. Then a thin, warm hand rested on my shoulder. I looked up to see Evelyn smile. "My smart girl, another A, huh?" she asked, her voice soft, but enough to make my heart skip. One simple sentence, but for a kid living in the shade her whole life, it was like the first ray of sunlight. Evelyn wasn't the type of grandma who spoiled you with candy or pocket money. She loved me in a subtler way, by listening. She asked about the books I read, the math problems I solved, the ideas I was writing for the school club. While the family cheered Madison's performances, she'd quietly slip into my room, sit on my bed and say, "Tell me what you're working on, kid." Once I broke down in front of her, blurting out the question I'd buried for years. "Why do they love Madison more than me?" She pulled me into a hug, the lavender scent of her shawl wrapping around me like a soft blanket. Then she said slowly, each word etching into my mind, "They don't love your sister more. They love the image she creates for them. You reflect the truth, hardworking, practical, simple, and the truth, Rachel, always scares people." Those words became the red thread guiding me through the years. They explained why my efforts were taken for granted, while Madison's offbeat dance moves were hailed as genius. It wasn't because I was lesser. It was because I was a mirror they couldn't bear to look into. Another time, I won first place in a statewide essay contest. The certificate hung on the school bulletin board, but at home, no one asked. Dad just said, "Add." "Writing? What's that going to do for money?" Then he turned to Madison. "What color dress do you want for your next performance?" I gave a bitter smile, but that night, Evelyn showed up with an apple pie. She said, "This calls for a celebration." We ate pie in the kitchen, just the two of us, no fanfare, but it felt warmer than any party my parents ever threw for Madison. What made her different was that she didn't just praise me, she taught me how to read myself. When I got upset about being overlooked, she didn't coddle me. She looked me in the eye and said, "You don't need to shout to prove your worth. Consistency and kindness, that's real strength. One day you'll see." Back then, I was young and took it as mere comfort. But as I grew, I realized it was truth. Because if you keep screaming in a room where everyone plugs their ears, all you'll get is a hoarse throat. But Evelyn wasn't just a talker. She acted. She was there for my important moments, from school award ceremonies to tiny library competitions. She was the only one who stood and clapped when I gave my speech at the district debate contest. I looked down from the stage and saw her eyes shining, as if saying, "I see you. I always see you." In a family that treated me like background noise, she was the spotlight. Of course, my parents didn't like that. They'd mock me, saying I clung to Grandma for praise. Madison would pout, "You're only Grandma's favorite because you've got no one else." I didn't deny it. Yes, I only had her. But sometimes one person who truly sees you is worth more than 100 who pretend to care. One memory still brings tears to my eyes. I was 16, preparing my college scholarship application. I was struggling with my essay, hands shaking with fear. Madison walked into my room and sneered. Writing all that won't help, you don't have any special talents. Her words cut like a knife, but Evelyn appeared just in time. She placed her hand on my shoulder, gentle but firm. Don't let anyone define you by their shortcomings. Keep writing, and one day, you'll prove them wrong. That night, I wrote until dawn. And just as she said, I won a full scholarship. Evelyn wasn't rich, but she gave me something money couldn't buy: belief in myself. Thanks to her, I learned that unfairness doesn't have to turn you bitter. You can stay calm and let your success speak for itself. If the first chapter was a portrait of cracks, this one is the only warm color in the picture. Evelyn was proof that even when the world turns its back, one person by your side can keep you going. And it was her quiet, steadfast love that planted the seed for what came later, when she left me her house. A gift that wasn't just property but a declaration. Rachel, you are worthy. Here's my question for you, reading this. If you've ever had one person stand by you when the world was against you, how would you cherish them? And if you find this story compelling enough to keep going, comment, why? If you think it's just another family drama, comment N. I really want to know. They say every child's path to adulthood depends on the wings their parents give them. But in the Donovan house, my parents handed out wings in the most unfair way possible. Madison got a set of golden feathered wings, light, shiny, perfect for show. Me? I got nothing. I had to learn to grow my own wings, rough and slow as they were. By my senior year of high school, Madison was still 15, and her life was like a Broadway show under bright stage lights. Every day brought new dance lessons, new performance dresses, new praise from our parents. I sat at the corner of the dinner table, eating cold soup, listening to them plan to send Madison to an art camp in New York. Me? I was calculating how many library shifts I'd need to afford SAT prep books. Dad once declared, Rachel's independent. She doesn't need much. But Madison, she's fragile. We need to invest in her. I wanted to laugh. Fragile? Madison was fragile like a hurricane, sweeping away all attention from me. So I went to college the only way I could: scholarships and part-time jobs. I juggled 3 gigs at once: waitressing, library assistant, and tutoring high school math. Some nights I walked back to my dorm at 1 a.m., hands trembling with a few crumpled bills, just enough for textbooks and food. But strangely, I didn't feel miserable. I felt free. Meanwhile, Madison was fully funded by our parents to attend a pricey art school in Dallas. She changed majors 3 times in 2 years, from visual arts to photography to marketing. Each switch meant Mom and Dad pulling out their credit card, sighing but smiling. As long as she finds her passion. It chilled me. If I'd changed majors, they'd have called me aimless, lazy. But when Madison did it, it was a sign of creative exploration. As we grew, the gap between us became glaring. I buried myself in tax law books at the library. She posted photos from her new studio. I wrestled with managerial accounting. She traveled to Europe for artistic inspiration. Once, during a visit home, I told my parents I'd passed the first part of the CPA exam, the Certified Public Accountant test, a beast that makes most people shudder. Dad glanced at me, gave a half-hearted nod, then turned to Madison. Are you planning an art show? That could be a big step for your career. That was it. My months of sleepless nights, stacks of dense study guides, swallowed up by Madison's artistic career. Don't you see the irony? My accounting job, dry as it was, keeps society running, yet it was dismissed as unimportant. Meanwhile, Madison's abstract paintings, so vague even she couldn't explain them, were hailed as masterpieces. I remember my college graduation. A huge auditorium, hundreds of families cheering, snapping photos, holding flowers. I scanned the crowd for my parents. Nothing. Instead, I got a text from Mom. Sorry, hun, we had to fly to LA today. Madison has an important performance. You understand, right? The text hit like a cold verdict. I stood there in my cap and gown, holding only my diploma, no flowers, no hugs, no proud looks. But amidst the sea of strangers, I saw a small figure waving. Evelyn. She leaned on her cane, back slightly hunched, but her smile lit up the hall. She hugged me and slipped a small bouquet of roses into my hand. She said, I wouldn't miss this. You did it, Rachel. I choked up, tears spilling. In that moment, I realized one person's belief in you can outweigh everyone else's absence. After graduating, I started at an audit firm in downtown Austin. The pay wasn't great, the hours were long, but I was proud. Every dollar I earned was mine. Meanwhile, Madison was still bankrolled by our parents, upgrading cars, phones, and posting glamorous travel pics on Instagram. I scraped by to pay off student loans and rent a tiny apartment. The difference between us wasn't just material, it was how we faced life. I knew if I fell, no one would catch me. Madison? Every stumble of hers had mom and dad laying out a cushioned landing. Eventually, I stopped comparing. I realized the unfairness had forged me. It taught me to stand on my own, to find joy in small victories, to smirk at favoritism without letting it kill me. But if you think my independence was enough to stop my family from looking down on me, you're wrong. In their eyes, I was still just practical Rachel, nothing special. They didn't realize that practical was what kept me alive. They say some losses shatter your heart into 1,000 pieces, but from those shards you find unexpected light. For me, that light came from Evelyn, even after she was gone. The day she died, Austin was in mid-March, spring rain drizzling on the porch, the scent of wet earth mingling with the lavender lingering in her bedroom. I stood frozen by her empty bed, feeling like time had ripped away my only anchor. Madison sobbed loudly, but anyone with sharp eyes could see it was performative. A loud cry to prove she was the most heartbroken. Me? I couldn't cry. All I felt was a cold void in my chest. The funeral passed like a staged social event. Relatives came, shook hands, nodded, muttered, "She lived a good life," then moved on to the buffet. My parents played the dutiful child role, while I felt like a stranger. But I knew the real drama was waiting for the will reading. Evelyn's lawyer, Ms. Mills, called us to her office in downtown Austin. The meeting room was square, with a dark wooden table and harsh white light that made everyone look pale. I sat on one side, clutching the small notebook Evelyn had given me. "You'll need this to remember what matters." Madison sat across, eyes red but lips still glossed, as if ready for a magazine shoot post-will. Dad tapped his fingers impatiently. Mom's eyes gleamed like she smelled money. Ms. Mills opened the file, her voice steady. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Evelyn Grace, who passed peacefully on March 14th. I'll read the main clause verbatim." The room went silent. I heard my own heartbeat. "After careful consideration, I, Evelyn Grace, bequeath my house at 127 Maple Avenue, Austin, valued at $700,000, along with all its furnishings and garden, to my granddaughter, Rachel Donovan. No sharing conditions, no co-ownership rights, full ownership belongs to Rachel." For a split second, I thought I'd misheard. I stared at the lawyer, then glanced at my parents. Their faces froze. Dad's turned red, Mom's jaw dropped, and Madison, oh, her eyes, flashed with raw greed that almost made me laugh. There was no grief in her gaze, only fury at not being the chosen heir. She glared at me as if saying, "What makes you special?" Ms. Mills continued with minor clauses. Charity funds, jewelry for distant relatives. But no one cared. The room zeroed in on that one sentence: a $700,000 house in Austin's priciest neighborhood now belonged to me. I sat there, trying to keep a neutral face, but inside was a whirlwind. Grief for losing Evelyn, shock at the gift, and a hint of bitter satisfaction. She saw me, even when my parents pretended not to. Dad broke the silence first, leaning toward the lawyer, his voice low. "Are you sure? Evelyn might not have been clear-headed when she wrote this. We're her children. Rachel's just a grandchild." Ms. Mills didn't flinch. "Evelyn drafted this will 2 years ago, fully lucid, with 2 doctors confirming her mental health. The document is legally airtight." Mom jumped in, her voice syrupy but sharp. "But Rachel already has her own apartment. She's so independent. Madison needs a home to start her career." I let out a dry laugh. "You're right, Mom. I am independent. Maybe that's why Grandma trusted me to take care of what she left behind, instead of turning it into a stage for meaningless paintings." Madison gasped, her face flushing. "You always think you're smarter than everyone. You don't understand art." I tilted my head, smirking. "Maybe not, but I understand the numbers on a deed." The air thickened. If looks could kill, I'd have dropped dead at the table. In that moment, I remembered Evelyn's words. You don't need to shout to prove your worth. Consistency and kindness are strength. She'd foreseen this moment when my family would see me as a thief. But she wasn't wrong. I didn't need to shout. The will spoke for me. The meeting ended, and everyone shuffled out. Madison lingered, stopping in front of me to whisper, "You won't keep it. You'll have to share with me eventually." I looked her in the eye and said softly, "Try me." Driving home, I passed the house, its wide porch, lavender garden where I'd read with Evelyn. For the first time, I felt I had a place to return to. A home not for show but to exist in. But I knew the joy wouldn't last. My family would never let go. They saw everything as shared property, despite the will, and I knew the war had only just begun. If you want to hear more stories and struggles like mine and relate to them, check out my previous videos on this channel. There's a kind of text you never want to get at 6 a.m. One from your mom saying, "Have you reconsidered the house yet?" Trust me, no morning coffee survives a line like that. After the will reading, my phone became a torture device. At first it was gentle calls. "Rachel, that house is too big for you to live in alone. Sweetie, family is about sharing, not hoarding." Then it escalated to accusations. "You're so selfish. Madison needs that house for her career. You want to see your sister rent a dump while you live in grandma's mansion?" And finally, subtle threats. "If you keep this up, don't blame us for cutting you off." I'd sit on my couch, staring at my phone lighting up like a warning flare, my heart swaying. Part of me wanted to chuck it out the window. The other part found it laughable. They never cared where I lived, what I ate, or if I could pay tuition. But now, suddenly, they were worried I'd be lonely in a big house. Relatives joined in like a choir. Aunts and uncles who hadn't called in years suddenly rang, their voices dripping with soap opera tears. "Family comes first, Rachel. Sell the house, split the money. You're young, you can buy another later." I wanted to reply, "Auntie, I'm young, but not young enough to be stupid." The climax was what they called a family intervention. It was a scorching Austin day. I'd just finished a long workday when I got home to find my parents, Madison, and even Aunt Helen, who I hadn't seen since a cousin's wedding a decade ago, waiting at my door. "We need to talk," Mom declared, her voice dramatic like she was hosting a reality show. I sat down, feeling like I was on trial. Dad leaned back, arms crossed, eyes cold. Madison sobbed, dabbing her eyes with tissue, mascara streaking down her cheeks, classic "I'm the victim" vibes. "Rachel," Dad started, "have you thought this through? Grandma left you the house, but that's because she was confused, influenced. You know Madison needs it for her future." I leaned back, crossing my legs, keeping my voice steady. "I built my future by studying, working extra jobs, fending for myself. Why can't Madison do the same?" "Because she's not you," Mom snapped. "She's fragile, sensitive. You're supposed to protect her." I smirked. When was I fragile? When I walked 40 minutes to school in the Texas heat with no ride? When I worked 3 jobs to pay tuition? Or when I graduated and you didn't even show up? The room went heavy. I saw Dad's face redden. Mom looked down, but Madison exploded. "You're always whining. You don't understand my pressure. I need that house for a studio, to meet clients. If you loved me, you'd share." I looked at her, speaking slowly. "Madison, have I ever needed someone to love me? Or was everything I needed handed to me on a platter since I was a kid?" My words hit like a blade. Madison cried harder, burying her face in Mom's shoulder. Mom glared at me, eyes full of blame. "You're breaking my heart. How can you be so cold?" I felt myself tremble, not from fear, but from anger. Anger that they always flipped the roles. Me, the abandoned one, was now the villain, while Madison, the pampered one, was the victim. Then Dad played his trump card. "If you don't agree to sell and split, don't consider us family anymore." The words landed like a hammer. I went silent, my heart racing. I looked around. Aunt Helen avoided my eyes. Mom clung to Madison. Dad stared like a challenge. I felt like I'd fallen off the last thread tying me to family. That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open. I thought of Evelyn's words, consistency and kindness. But what does kindness mean here? Does it mean letting them take the only thing Grandma left me? My heart tore. One side wanted to hold on to the one place where I was valued. The other feared losing the already frayed connection to my parents. When my phone buzzed at midnight, I knew who it was. A text from Mom. "Think it over. Don't tear this family apart over a house." I gave a bitter smile. Tear the family apart? Was our family ever whole? I set the phone down, closed my eyes, but my heart stormed. I never expected the house, Grandma's final gift, would become a life or death battle over loyalty, family, and my own honor. Have you ever been in a spot where life throws you a bomb, but instead of exploding, it turns into a key? I have. And that bomb came as an unexpected text, just when I thought I was backed into a corner. After my parents' ultimatum, sell the house or be disowned, I barely slept for 3 nights. At work, I kept up the calm accountant facade, but inside, my mind spun like a spreadsheet with a broken formula. Could I handle this? Was I really ready to lose everything for that house? Then fate knocked. On the fourth night, as I was about to silence my phone to avoid Mom's relentless texts, it lit up with an unknown number. The message was short. "Rachel, this is Ethan Joe. I heard you might sell the house on Maple Avenue. I'm interested. Can we talk?" Ethan Joe. The name made my heart skip. Not just the CEO of the tech company where I worked as an accountant, but the guy Madison always bragged about. My boss totally admires my talent. She saw Ethan as her ladder to the top. And now, that ladder was reaching out to me. I laughed, a bitter, thrilled laugh. The universe has a sense of humor. I texted back, "We can discuss, but absolute secrecy." Seconds later, the screen glowed. "Understood. Can I meet you tonight?" We met at a small coffee shop on South Congress. Ethan arrived on time, in a simple dress shirt, but radiating the aura of someone used to making million-dollar decisions. He looked at me, cutting to the chase. "I want to buy the house. Its location is perfect for a satellite office for my company, but I also know it means something personal to you." I nodded, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "It does. It's my grandmother's last gift, but my family's pressuring me to sell. If I sell to them, I lose everything. If I keep it, I lose them." Ethan paused, then tilted his head, eyes sharp. "You're forgetting a third option. Sell to me." It sounded simple, but in that moment, I felt like a drowning person spotting a boat. I asked, "But if I sell, I lose the house forever." Ethan smiled. "Not quite. I'm willing to add a special clause. You lease the upstairs at a low rate for 10 years, plus a priority buyback option later at the current price. The contract will be legally binding." I sat stunned. It was the best of both worlds, keeping the house as my home and escaping my family's grip. Evelyn's words echoed. "Consistency and kindness are strength." Maybe consistency didn't mean clinging to the house. It meant protecting her legacy the smartest way possible. I looked at Ethan. "How much?" 800,000, he replied instantly. 20 grand above market. I'm paying extra for certainty." I nearly laughed. My family would lose it when they heard someone offered above market. And they'd go ballistic when they learned it was Madison's CEO. I shook his hand. The grip was firm, warm, like a vow. I was no longer a pawn in my parents' game. 3 days later, the contract was done. I signed, hands trembling, but heart oddly calm. Ms. Mills witnessed, confirming every paper was legit. I read every line, 10-year lease, buyback option, all sealed in red ink. Leaving the office, I stood on the steps, Austin's breeze in my hair. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without choking. My family kept texting, kept threatening. They had no idea the prize they were fighting for was already someone else's. They were pouring energy into making me surrender, unaware the battle was over. And I'll admit I felt smug. There's a strange joy in knowing a secret others haven't guessed. But alongside that smugness was worry. I knew my parents. They wouldn't accept defeat easily. Madison even less. When the truth came out, it'd be explosive. I was legally prepared, but emotionally, could I handle it? I sat on my couch, looking around my small apartment. In a few weeks, I'd move to the upstairs of Evelyn's house, both its legal heir and legal tenant, a beautiful paradox. Then another text from Ethan. "Your family seems tense. I'm here if you need backup, but remember, you're in control now." I set the phone down, laughing. My whole life, no one ever told me I was in control. I was used to enduring. And now, with one contract, I'd flipped the board. Have you ever sat in a room with people who share your blood, but their eyes look at you like you're the enemy? I have. And that room wasn't a courtroom, but it felt like a secret trial. It was a Thursday morning in Ms. Mills' office. The small room had a glossy walnut table, slightly worn leather chairs, and a landscape painting meant to calm. But that day, it was the stage for a family drama rehearsed to perfection. My parents arrived first, clutching a thick folder. Behind them was a woman in a bright red blazer, her heels clicking, a real estate agent they'd hired to help me see reason. And of course, Madison came last, eyes already red, clutching a tissue like a prop. I sat at the head of the table trying to stay calm. In my purse, my phone buzzed faintly. A bank notification. Contract finalized. I glanced at the screen, lips twitching, but I hid it. The play wasn't at its climax yet. Ms. Mills opened her notebook, saying calmly, "We're here to discuss the house on Maple Avenue." "What's there to discuss?" Dad interrupted, his voice booming. "We brought a realtor. We have a cash buyer ready. This is the best deal for Rachel and the family." The red blazer realtor slid a stack of papers toward me, smiling stiffly. "If you sign today, we can close in a week. The offer's above market." I rested my hand on the papers, not opening them. "I haven't agreed to sell." Mom switched to her sweet tone. "Rachel, don't be stubborn. Why keep such a big house to yourself? Your sister needs it for her career. Family needs unity." Madison let out a sob, launching her performance. "Rachel, I don't want to take anything from you. I just want a chance. My boyfriend and I have plans. Without a house, we can't start." I had to bite my lip not to laugh. The boyfriend was probably Brad, 3 months in. A month ago, she called Kevin her soulmate. If I gave up the house for her future, it'd probably be home to a new fling in weeks. I turned to Ms. Mills, feigning curiosity. "Does the will say I have to share the house with anyone?" "No," she replied crisply. "The will grants you full ownership." Dad's face paled, but he regained his edge. "Wills can be contested. Evelyn was frail. We can sue for undue influence." I leaned back, voice sharp. "Grandma was certified lucid by 2 doctors when she signed. You gonna sue them too?" The room went quiet. Madison seized the moment, sniffling. "Rachel, I don't want our family to fall apart. I know Mom and Dad love me more, but how can you be so cruel?" Her words stabbed. Hearing Mom and Dad love me more made me want to clap. At least she'd admitted the truth for once. I took a deep breath, looking around. My parents waited for me to cave. The realtor eyed a commission. Madison sobbed. I felt like prey in a pack of wolves. But in my purse, the contract confirmation glowed. I wasn't prey. I'd set the trap. "Family is everything, Rachel," Mom said, lowering her voice like she was doing me a favor. "If you don't sign, don't blame us." Her words hit hard. In that moment, I thought of Evelyn. You don't need to shout. Consistency is strength. I felt my heart steady. I gave a small smile and said, "You want me to sign today? Fine. But first, let's all go to the house. I think everyone should see what they're fighting for one last time." All eyes turned to me. Dad frowned. "What game are you playing?" "Just fairness. If it's family property, we should see it one last time before deciding." Ms. Mills glanced at me, sensing something, but stayed silent. My parents exchanged looks, then nodded. "Fine, we'll go now." Madison wiped her tears, forcing a smile. "You'll see, Rachel. We'll be a family again." I stood, heart steady. In my purse, my phone buzzed again. Title transfer filed, confirmed. The real game was about to begin. They say every family tragedy can be summed up in one crowded car ride. That day, I saw it come true. My parents decided on a march to Evelyn's house. Their plan was simple: drag everyone there, pressure me emotionally, make me see I had no choice. They didn't know the choice was made 3 days ago. But I didn't reveal it yet. Sometimes, to show who's in charge, you let others think they're winning. We set off like a comedic funeral procession. I drove my old silver sedan, followed by my parents' SUV carrying Madison and the red blazer realtor, a mobile warning sign. Ms. Mills drove separately, her face stern, like a judge quietly taking notes. In my car, I played country music, but text alerts kept interrupting. Madison was spamming the family group chat. "Don't make a scene in front of everyone. Please think of me this time. Mom and Dad are stressed. Don't give Mom high blood pressure." I laughed alone. So I was both the criminal and the family doctor, responsible for Mom's health. As I turned onto Maple Avenue, my heart twinged. Evelyn's house came into view. White porch, lush lavender garden, untouched by the family storm brewing. I took a deep breath, staying calm, knowing things were about to explode. Then I nearly burst out laughing. Parked in the driveway was a sleek white Tesla Model S, a familiar license plate. I braked, eyes locked on it. Ethan Joe was already there. I stepped out, keeping my face blank. Behind me, I heard the SUV screech to a halt, then Mom's shrill voice. "Whose car is that?" Madison opened her door, stepping out, face pale. Her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God, that's Ethan's car, my CEO!" I had to fight not to laugh out loud. The universe rarely hands you such perfect drama. Dad frowned, scanning as if Ethan might pop out of the bushes. Mom stood confused, not yet connecting the dots. The realtor fumbled with her papers, probably wondering if she should bolt before becoming an unwilling witness. I strolled up the steps. The key in my hand was useless now. The house had a new owner, but I held it, like a sweet secret in my pocket. The door opened. Ethan appeared, white dress shirt, calm as ever, freezing the group behind me. He smiled at me. "Rachel, right on time." Mom choked out, Who are you?" Madison whispered, "That's my boss." A strange silence fell. Dad's face reddened, his voice low. "What's going on?" I turned, facing their stunned expressions. Dad fuming, Mom confused, Madison terrified, the realtor ready to vanish. I took a deep breath, voice as calm as I could manage. "Maybe we should go inside. If you want the truth, best hear it where it started, in this house." They hesitated but followed. The house became a courtroom, with Ethan as the star witness and me, the one they thought would crumble, holding the final card. In my head, fate's ironic laughter echoed. They wanted to force me to sell. They thought I'd bow. But standing before them wasn't the Rachel who quietly endured. Here was Rachel with a signed contract, a powerful ally, and a secret ready to shatter their staged play. If I could frame one moment and hang it in the living room to smile at every morning, it'd be this. Ethan Joe standing at Evelyn's door, casually dropping the line that silenced the entire Donovan family. He adjusted his sleeve, voice calm but clear. "Hello, I'm the new owner of this house." The room went dead quiet. The ceiling fan's creak sounded like a dark play's sound effect. Mom spoke first, voice breaking. "Owner, no, this is my daughter's house, Rachel's house." Ethan glanced at Ms. Mills. She promptly pulled a thick file from her bag, laying it neatly on the living room table. Papers were notarized and filed with the land registry 3 days ago. Legal owner, Ethan Joe. Dad snatched the documents, flipping frantically as if searching for a magic line to undo the truth. His face reddened, veins bulging. Madison slumped into a chair, lips trembling. I could read her eyes. How is my boss involved?" I sat still, hands clasped, voice steady. Inside, I was cheering, but Evelyn taught me, the sweetest victory is the one you don't have to shout for. Mom slammed the table, clinging to control. "This is a scam! Rachel was manipulated! We'll sue!" Ethan gave a soft laugh, unfazed. "I paid $800,000, above market. If anyone was manipulated, it was me. But I wanted this house for a satellite office, completely transparent." Ms. Mills nodded. "I reviewed the contract. No errors. It's a legal, indisputable transaction." The room erupted in chaos. Dad stammered, No way. This is our family's property. Rachel had no right." I cut in, voice icy. "You wanted a sale, I sold, just not to you." That moment, I saw their faces collapse. Dad like he'd been slapped, Mom's eyes wide, Madison's jaw dropped, the realtor quietly gathering her papers, face pale. Outside, whispers rose. I glanced out. Neighbors had gathered. Mrs. Kim from across the street stood arms crossed, smirking. Mr. Peterson wasn't shy about filming with his phone. Our family was known for flaunting Madison's achievements while ignoring me. Now their play was unraveling before a familiar audience. Madison finally broke, sobbing loudly. You ruined my career! How could you do this to your own sister?" I looked at her, weary. "Madison, your career can't hinge on stealing someone else's legacy. If you need a house to survive, that's not a career. It's parasitism." Mom hugged Madison, glaring at me with venom. "You're heartless, Rachel. Only a cold person could do this to their sister." I gave a soft laugh, unable to hold back. Cold? What about the years I walked to school in the Texas sun with no ride? Worked 3 jobs for tuition? Graduated alone with only grandma in the stands? Who was cold then? Dad opened his mouth to yell, but Ethan stepped in, voice calm but commanding. "I suggest you leave. This is now company property. Keep causing a scene and we'll call the police." I'd never seen Dad swallow such a big lump of pride. He turned abruptly, Mom dragging Madison up. But before leaving, Madison looked back, eyes red. You'll regret this, you'll be alone forever, I replied with a wry smile. Alone but free is better than trapped in a gilded family cage. Outside, neighbors buzzed. I stepped onto the porch, breathing deeply. Austin's afternoon sun lit the lavender garden like it was smiling at me. In the breeze, I heard Evelyn's voice. You don't need to shout to prove your worth. But I knew this wasn't the end. My family never accepted defeat easily. They'd be back, with worse tactics. And the next battle wouldn't just be in a meeting room. Some moments don't need revenge. Fate does it for you. And sometimes, fate has a wicked sense of humor. For me, that moment came right after my family reeled from Ethan Joe being the new owner. They hadn't recovered when the double blow hit. Ethan stood in the living room, his polite smile sharp as a blade. To clarify, the company will use this house as a satellite office for the marketing department, specifically Madison's team. Gasps came from all sides. Dad nearly roared. What? No way! Madison stood frozen, lips moving like a fish out of water. What did you say? Ethan's voice stayed calm, each word deliberate. This will be the main workplace for the marketing team starting next week. All facilities are ready. Mom lunged forward, almost blocking Ethan. No, you can't make my daughter work here. This was my mother's house. You have no right to turn it into an office. Ms. Mills, silent until now, spoke up. Sorry, ma'am, but the owner decides usage. Mr. Joe has full legal rights. No one can interfere. The room dissolved into chaos. Madison clutched her face, moaning, No, I can't work here. I can't sit in Grandma's reading room. I can't see Rachel every day. I sat with arms crossed, lips twitching. So, the one thing Madison couldn't handle was seeing me. Ethan nodded to me. As agreed, Rachel will live upstairs. We've arranged a separate entrance to avoid disrupting office work. Dad stared at me like he was seeing his daughter for the first time. You're siding with an outsider against your own family? I took a deep breath, replying softly. No, I'm siding with the law and with myself. A tense silence fell. Madison's eyes pierced like needles. She trembled. You planned this, didn't you? You want to torture me, making me work in this house that should have been mine. I met her gaze calm. No, Madison. I just wanted to protect Grandma's legacy. You working here, that's just the consequence. At that, she collapsed into a chair, tears streaming. Mom rushed to her, glaring at me. You're cruel, Rachel. Only a monster would do this to their sister. I laughed softly, unable to stop. Monster? What about the years I walked to school, paid my own tuition while you all drove Madison to dance class? Who was the monster then? Dad started to shout, but Ethan cut in. Sorry, but this meeting is over. The design team arrives tomorrow and office furniture comes next week. Prepare yourselves. Mr. Peterson, the neighbor who'd been outside, laughed loudly. I glanced out. More neighbors had gathered, whispering, chuckling. The Donovans, who'd bragged about Madison for years, were now public entertainment. Madison covered her face, shaking her head. No, I can't work here. I can't. Ethan, with his signature cold courtesy, said, Madison, if it's unsuitable, you can request a team transfer, but that means losing your manager title. Your choice. Her face went white. I knew she'd never give up the manager title she flaunted everywhere. She'd have to swallow her pride, walk into this house every morning, pass me, and work in the space she'd tried to take. A strange kind of justice, served without me lifting a finger, just the law and fate working together. As my family shuffled out, I stood at the door watching. Madison kept her head down, my parents whispering plans, but I knew deep down the crack was clear, the crack of power reversed. I went back inside, sitting in Evelyn's old reading chair. I closed my eyes, breathing in the faint lavender from the garden. She was right. Consistency is strength. Do you believe it? I used to think revenge would feel exhilarating. But watching Madison tremble, hands covering her face, I only felt empty. I wasn't joyful, just balanced like a scale finally leveled. But I knew this was just the start. Madison wouldn't accept this quietly. My parents wouldn't sit still. The next battle wouldn't just be about a house, it'd be about whether I could keep this newfound peace or get dragged back into their cycle of vengeance. They say after a storm, only wreckage remains. But for me, after the Donovan family storm, what lingered was silence. A strange silence, both eerie and liberating. The next day, I was officially disowned. My family created a new group chat, without me. I knew because Aunt Helen, fed up with them, sent me a screenshot. In it, Dad wrote, Rachel chose Betrayal, we're done with her. I read it, smiling faintly. Truth is, I'd been done with for years. Their official declaration just sealed a bond already rotten. My phone went oddly quiet. No more 6 a.m. Reconsider texts. No accusing calls. No fake tears from Madison. I stepped onto the porch, sat in Evelyn's old chair, and looked at the garden. For the first time in weeks, I heard birds chirping louder than my phone. But if my family turned away, the neighbors stepped in. Mrs. Kim from across the street brought a tray of chocolate cookies. She winked. Evelyn told us everything. Don't think you're alone. Everyone knows how biased your family was. I was so moved I nearly cried. All these years I thought I was invisible, but someone saw me. Then Mr. Peterson, the grumpy neighbor, patted my shoulder. Yesterday's scene was epic. That line, I sold but not to you. I've replayed it in my head. I laughed. Who knew my spur-of-the-moment line would become a neighborhood classic? In the days that followed, I got more small gestures. A young neighbor brought a hydrangea plant saying, "Planted in the garden for Evelyn." A kid from next door gave me a scribbled drawing of the house with the note, "Rachel is the strongest." I didn't need my parents' approval. I had a quiet community cheering me on. In the afternoons, I worked in the garden. Digging into the soil, planting Evelyn's beloved lavender, I felt a strange calm. Sometimes I sat for hours by the flower beds, breathing in the gentle scent. I felt her there, in every petal, every breeze. I realized the real victory wasn't my family crumbling in anger, but me sitting here at peace, no longer needing permission to exist. Yet that silence wasn't empty. It was a pause, a setup for a new chapter. I knew Madison wouldn't stay quiet. I knew my parents were plotting behind my back. That group chat wasn't for silence, it was for planning the next battle. One evening, as I read on the porch, Mrs. Kim called over. "Rachel, don't let your guard down. Linda's been asking other lawyers. They're still trying to overturn it." I nodded, smiling in thanks. My heart no longer trembled. I was ready, with the lease, the buyback option, and the calm Evelyn passed down. Someone asked me, "Rachel, was it worth it? Losing your family for a house?" I thought long and hard, then realized I didn't lose a family because I never truly had one. I lost an illusion in exchange for a place that was mine. Every morning, as sunlight poured through the upstairs bedroom window, I felt like I was living in Evelyn's unwritten letter, "You deserve to be here." And though the storm had calmed, I knew a new earthquake was brewing. Madison couldn't stand walking into this office every day, passing me like a shadow. Soon, she'd erupt. And this time, the fallout might be bigger than the first. If fairness is a double-edged sword, Madison finally grabbed the sharp end. I didn't need to act. My parents' pampering and her own illusions did the job. It started weeks after the marketing team moved into Evelyn's house. I watched from upstairs, hearing keyboards clack and meetings hum through the old vents. The house, once filled with lavender's scent, now mixed with brewed coffee and mouse clicks. If Evelyn were alive, she'd probably laugh. The kitchen where she baked apple pies was now a KPI discussion hub. The problem was, Madison, the department's youngest manager, was no longer sheltered. When the company set up here, Ethan seemed to deliberately pull back the protective umbrella my parents had built around her. She had to take responsibility. And that's when things cracked. Her first campaign as manager flopped hard. Her creative idea, a series of abstract art videos to promote software, left clients confused. Sales didn't budge. I overheard from a meeting. A junior employee dared ask, "Are we selling software or hosting an art gallery?" I didn't see Madison's face then, but I could imagine, red, lips trembling, hands clutching a pen, trying to muster authority. But authority doesn't come from tears. Failures piled up. Team morale tanked, reports were late, clients complained. One day, as I watered plants on the balcony, I saw Madison sitting in her car, hands covering her face, mascara smeared. The windows were up, but her choked sobs leaked out. I stood still, feeling a mix of pity and justice. The company put Madison on a PIP, performance improvement plan, a one-way ticket out unless you transform. I heard coworkers gossip. "PIP's the first step to firing." When the news reached my parents, they lost it. Mom called nonstop, blaming me. If she didn't have to work in that house, Madison wouldn't be this stressed. "You ruined her career." I stayed silent. One thought echoed. No, your coddling ruined her. Watching Madison struggle, I remembered myself at 20. I'd trembled before tough exams, stayed up all night on reports. But the difference? No one carried me. I grew because I had to fend for myself. Madison never felt that. And now, for the first time, she was paying the price. One afternoon, as I got home, I saw Madison still in her car, eyes swollen. I meant to pass quietly, but she called out, voice hoarse. Are you happy seeing me like this? I paused, looking at her through the misty window. For a moment, I wanted to say yes, to throw back all the years of being sidelined. But then I saw her trembling shoulders, the real panic in her eyes. I sighed. No, Madison, I'm not happy, but I'm not surprised. You never learned to stand on your own. She sobbed, burying her face in the steering wheel. I turned away, my heart heavy. Turns out, when the price is paid, the satisfaction I expected felt more like quiet sorrow. That night, I watered the garden. Lavender's scent wafted, reminding me of Evelyn. I whispered, as if to her, Grandma, fairness came, but why don't I feel lighter? Maybe because fairness isn't always sweet. Sometimes it's bitter, like medicine someone needs to wake up. But I knew this was just the start. Madison would either explode or collapse. And my parents, instead of facing the truth, would keep blaming me. Some phone calls, are bad news just from the ring. For me, it was Mom's call on a Monday morning. Her voice blared like a fire alarm. Rachel, your sister got fired. This is all your fault. I froze, my steaming coffee nearly slipping. So the day had come. Madison didn't survive the PIP. Part of me sighed in relief. The truth was confirmed. But another part just felt quiet sadness. Mom kept yelling, if it weren't for you, for that damn contract, she wouldn't have worked there, wouldn't have been so stressed. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. Normally I'd feel instant guilt, but this time something in me had shifted. Maybe I was tired of being the punching bag. I replied softly, almost a whisper. Everyone's responsible for their own choices. The line went silent for a few seconds, then Mom erupted. How dare you say that? You're turning your back on your sister? I didn't argue. I set the phone down, letting her vent alone. When the ringing stopped, I sat still, staring at my now cold coffee. I felt calm. That afternoon, Madison came. She didn't knock, just stood in the yard, eyes red. I stepped onto the porch, leaning on the railing. Rachel, she said, voice raw, I've lost everything, my career, my reputation, everything. I looked at her long and hard. For a moment I saw little Madison, pampered by our parents, twirling in her ballet dress, all eyes on her. And now, here was a broken woman, facing a fall with no safety net for the first time. Madison, I said slowly, I know it hurts, but you haven't lost everything. You've only lost the illusion that you can live off others forever. She sobbed, covering her face. I didn't step down to comfort her. For the first time, I didn't feel obligated to save her because I knew if I did, she'd never learn. That night, my parents stormed in. They didn't bother knocking, just barged in like the house was still theirs. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Are you happy now? Your sister lost her job. You destroyed her career. Mom echoed, screaming. You're selfish. Only thinking of yourself, letting your sister be humiliated. Is that what a sister does? I sat still, eyes on my tea. Normally, I'd scramble to explain, tremble, wondering where I went wrong. But today, my heart was steady. I didn't make Madison fail, I said, deliberately using third person. I didn't create her bad campaign. I didn't neglect her team. I didn't let emotions ruin her work. Those were her choices and responsibilities. Dad shot me a look like a dagger. You're ungrateful. Without this family, would you be where you are? I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Where I am? The place where I worked 3 jobs for tuition? Graduated alone with only Grandma in the stands? That's thanks to family? The room went silent. Mom opened her mouth but closed it, finding no words. Madison sat curled in a corner, face swollen, eyes on the floor. I stood, voice firm. From now on, don't drag me into her failures. I'm done being your punching bag. They left, leaving the house quiet. I sat back, heart pounding but steady. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty facing Madison's collapse. I just felt free. I went to the garden, looking at the lavender under the moonlight. I whispered as if to Evelyn, "Grandma, I finally learned. I don't have to carry their blame anymore." The breeze carried the soft flower scent. I closed my eyes, letting calm seep into my veins. They say forgiveness isn't about the other person deserving it. It's about freeing yourself. I never fully believed that, until I saw Madison sitting in her car, eyes swollen, hair a mess, like a defeated warrior without armor. After her firing, she avoided me for days. Evelyn's house, once our battlefield, now held a tense silence. I heard her slow, heavy steps downstairs, like she carried the whole building on her shoulders. And every night, I saw the living room light glow late, Madison staying up, maybe plotting a life she had to face for real. My heart wrestled. Part of me wanted to let her face the consequences, call it justice for years of favoritism. But another part, Evelyn's voice in my memory whispered, "Kindness isn't weakness, it's strength." One afternoon, I sat across from Ethan at our usual coffee shop. He closed his laptop, looking at me. "Rachel, I'm guessing you've got something to discuss. Your eyes don't look like someone who just won a war. They look like someone gearing up for another." I gave a faint smile. "You're right. I want to ask, is there a training program suitable for Madison? Somewhere she can start over? Realistically, no frills." Ethan leaned back, eyebrows raised. "You still want to help your sister after everything?" I paused, then nodded. "Not because she deserves it, but because I don't want to carry this bitterness forever. I've lived long enough as the abandoned one. I don't want to become the vengeful one." He nodded slowly. "There's a practical marketing course at Austin Community College. Short-term, but grounded. If Madison works hard, she could restart there. I'll write a recommendation letter." Hearing that, I felt a weight lift. That night, I knocked on Madison's door. She opened it, eyes still red, face gaunt. She looked at me with a mix of wariness, shame, and faint hope. I handed her an envelope. She took it, hands shaking. "What's this?" "A new start," I said calmly. "A recommendation from Ethan. You can join a practical marketing course at Austin Community College. No glory, no spotlight, just learning, working, effort." She opened the envelope, eyes scanning the familiar signature. Her lips trembled. You did this for me?" I looked her in the eye, speaking slowly. "You can start over, but this time it's on your own effort. No parents, no me, no one to save you. Just you and yourself." In that moment, Madison broke. Not the dramatic, tissue-dabbing cry, but a raw, real sob. She sank onto the bed, face in hands, choking. "For the first time, I feel like you're really my sister." My heart clenched. All these years I'd dreamed of hearing that. Yet when it came, I didn't feel victorious, just peaceful. I sat beside her. We didn't say more, just let the tears fall, hers and mine, quietly. The next day, Madison started the course. I saw her leave early, no designer dresses or luxury bags, just a simple backpack. She hesitated at the door, glancing at me, as if asking for strength. I nodded lightly, no words needed. That afternoon, Mrs. Kim saw it and mused. "You chose the harder path, Rachel. The easiest is to walk away. Harder is to pull someone up. But that's how you break the cycle." I smiled. Evelyn would have agreed. That evening, Madison knocked on my door, placing a small bouquet of sunflowers on the table, stammering, "Thank you, I'll try." I touched the bright petals, heart light. I knew the road ahead was long, and Madison might not succeed. But for the first time, she was walking on her own feet. If someone told me years ago that one day Madison would stand at Evelyn's door with sunflowers instead of demands, I'd have laughed till I cried. But life loves throwing curveballs you'd never expect. That day, Austin's sun blazed. I was digging in the garden when I heard a soft knock. Unlike my parents' aggressive pounding, I opened the door. Madison stood there holding a small sunflower bouquet, her face shy. "For you," she said, voice shaky. I took them, smiling instinctively. Sunflowers, always turning toward the sun. Maybe she was saying she'd finally found her direction. "Thanks," I replied, simple but sincere. She looked around, eyes pausing on the aging lavender beds. Can we replant Grandma's flowers?" I nodded. We went to the garden. Hand in hand, we dug small holes, planting fresh lavender I'd prepared but hadn't had time to set. The soft soil and gentle scent made it feel like Evelyn was standing beside us, smiling at her granddaughters finally sitting together without fighting. While digging, Madison whispered, "I was wrong, so wrong. I got used to mom and dad's favoritism, to the point I didn't know how to live without someone paving the way. But you didn't abandon me, even though you had every right to." I looked at her, no blame, no sarcasm, just calm. "Madison, I haven't forgotten what happened, but I choose to forgive, not to make you feel better, but to give us both a chance to rewrite this." She bowed her head, tears falling onto the damp soil, soaking into the young lavender roots. My parents, of course, didn't transform overnight. They still favored Madison, still threw blame when they could. But something shifted. For the first time, they saw me as more than a shadow. One day, Dad stood by the fence watching me tend the garden. He cleared his throat. "You've done more than I thought." A short, awkward compliment, but to me, it was the end of years of being erased. Mom still hadn't dropped her complaints, but I saw her eyes soften when she saw Madison and me planting flowers together. Deep down, maybe she knew she'd helped create this tragedy, and that I'd broken its cycle. That afternoon, as we finished planting the last lavender, Madison and I sat on the steps, hands dirty but hearts light. "I'm still scared," Madison admitted. "Scared I'll fail again. Scared I'm not good enough." I set the sunflowers beside me, looking at her. "Failure won't kill you. Giving up will. You fell, but you've started again. That's enough." She nodded, eyes teary but lips curving into a smile. As the sun set, I watered the new flower beds alone. The lavender scent mixed with wet earth. I heard Evelyn's voice in the breeze. "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it gives you a chance to rewrite the future." I smiled. She was right. I didn't forget the years of being sidelined, the favoritism that wore down my childhood. But I wouldn't let it define the rest of my life. I chose forgiveness. Not to forget, but to live. Not to ease Madison's burden, but to lighten mine. And in that moment, amid the reviving lavender garden, I felt truly free. Closing this story, I realized something. Family isn't always the place that lifts you up. Sometimes it's the harshest test. But through the wounds and unfairness, I learned to stand firm, to say no to protect my worth, and most importantly, to choose kindness to avoid being trapped in hatred. Madison paid the price for her pampering, but it gave her a chance to start anew on her own feet. I didn't forget the past, but I chose forgiveness, because it doesn't erase what happened. It offers a chance to rewrite the future. That's the greatest gift Evelyn left me. Not just the house, but the lesson of consistency and kindness. If this story touched you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and follow the channel. Your support fuels me to keep sharing stories of family, fairness, and growth. Because somewhere out there you might see yourself in these seemingly distant lives.